of Representatives in District 33. Some of you sitting out here and sitting up here have heard the same thing, haven't you? What we've shared many times. I am a retired teacher. I taught 37 years, and now I've been retired, and feel that's one perspective that I could bring to the legislature. I also think that many of the things, as we're looking at education, and that was big topic when I was going door to door during the primary. Now suddenly it's changed to the economy. And personally, I think these things are interconnected, and we need to be looking at some ways to be sustainable for the state of South Dakota. Instead of looking at increasing spending, I think we need to look for ways that we can become more efficient in our spending and possibly even have to cut some programs. I had a gentleman the other day that I stopped at his house, and I asked him how it was going, and I told him who I was, and he said, well, we're not affected too much because we've never bought into the 3 C's. And I said, what are those 3 C's? He says, well, we don't have computer, we don't have cell phones, and we don't have credit cards. And I thought, you know what? If we think back 20 years ago, many of us were in that same situation, and maybe we need to be thinking about how we're spending our money. Is it really money that are buying extra things, or are they essential things, our needs that we have in our life? I have lived in both rural areas. I grew up on a farm, and then my husband and I farmed for 12 years, and then he went full-time in the National Guard. And we still own that farm in eastern South Dakota. I've lived in eastern South Dakota, western South Dakota. I've lived on the farms. I've lived in urban areas. And as far as my teaching experience, I taught in very small schools. And then we lived, through his job, we lived in Platte, Wagner, Huron, Rapid City. So I've had the opportunity to work in many different sizes of schools, and I think that is a perspective that I could bring to the legislature. As I have on my campaign material, I have vision for a sustainable future. And when I think of something being sustainable, I think of something being in a circle. And I think we have to look at that for South Dakota, that we want to still have our schools in our communities. We want to still have the people that were on the farms. But the farms have gotten bigger, so there's fewer people. Then we end up with fewer children in our schools. So it is a continuing cycle that I think we really need to be looking at. As we look ahead, I think that we need to pull up our bootstraps, move forward, look where we can cut, make things more efficient, and I would appreciate your vote at the polls. Thank you.
What can be done on a state level to clean up the Section 8 housing laws so that we have less deadbeats destroying our neighborhoods?
Yes.
What can be done on a state level to clean up the Section 8 housing laws so that we have less deadbeats destroying our neighborhoods?
Can someone explain what Section 8 is?
I don't know. Can someone? I know what it is. Can someone?
It's low-income subsidized housing.
Okay.
So it's housing for poor people is what it is.
Okay. I'm not sure that this can be legislated, but what happens when we don't have a personal investment in something, it's easier not to take care of it. And I have, throughout my teaching career, we've lived in communities where there are low-income housing and where a lot of the things were given to them without any anything on their part where they had to help with that housing that they lived. Or even as students, when I would have them come in and they would be, I don't have a pencil, so I would give them a pencil. Then they'd proceed to break the pencil. And then they would want another pencil. Well, you have to give me a pencil. So when you give, whatever that it is, if you don't have to invest anything in it, then I think that it's more likely that you're not going to take care of it. So I'm not sure if that can be legislated unless if we would have, I like the idea of Habitat for Humanity where the families have to help with building the house in order to get it and have some investment in it.
I was asked earlier, pertaining to wind energy, do you have ideas for wind energy in South Dakota?
Well, I think as we look at wind energy, someone just told me yesterday as I was going door to door, not yesterday, the day before, that in South Dakota there's some regulation that has to do with bats in South Dakota. Is anyone familiar with that? They had gone on some site that there was some regulation that protected bats except for certain areas in South Dakota. I have not checked it out, but it sounded interesting to me. I don't know if that was a legislative decision or what. Some of you that have been there, you maybe know about bats. I would like to look at not only if we're looking at the wind farms, but I think we need to be looking at, as far as wind energy, private entities or public entities, whether it's hospitals, schools, homes, housing developments, because one of the issues is the grid work and being able to use that energy, whereas if you worked on a smaller scale, that could provide it for areas in South Dakota without having to look at big, huge wind farms. I know that's one area that has been tapped into, but looking at our smaller, whether it's a private individual, a farm, or whether it's a hospital or a school. I'd like to be your choice for the House of Representatives in District 33 when you go to the polls. Throughout my life as a professional person, I have been on negotiations, and I feel that that is a skill that will be beneficial in the legislature. I know that I can sit at the table with opposing views or differing viewpoints and working towards that common interest, common goal. And I know going that we aren't always going to have it our way, and I have done that throughout my career. I also have done a lot with grassroots efforts. My second year of teaching, I started the special education program in eastern South Dakota, and I know throughout my life with nonprofits and other organizations and in my job, I have done working from the ground up, and I think that's what legislation is about. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline.